What can you do with an hour and 14 minutes? Well, for most of the men in the audience, I'm sure you can figure out at least one thing to do. But what'll you do with the other hour and 12 minutes? Well, if you were really hell-bent on the idea, you could watch Amon Saga, but really, why would you?
Between the time when the oceans drank Atlantis and the
No,
rise
no,
of the
no,
sun-
that's not it. That's a good sword and sandal movie. I apologize in advance if this seems a little disjointed, but I think watching this movie has actually scrambled my brains to the point where I can't think about it without drifting off. I suppose I should try and dive into the backstory a bit here. Let's see, Yoshitaka Amano did the concept art, and, that's about it. So, let's talk about swords and sandals for a moment. The premise of this style of genre film is really no different from your usual action flick. It just has more spears and togas than guns and pithy one-liners. The sword and sandal style movies that one might think of immediately are the pretty atrocious snarkbait films of the 50s that showed up on Mystery Science Theater, and the more recent films like Conan the Barbarian or John Carter of Mars. These films are all about bigger-than-life heroes, fantastical settings, and plotlines more paper-thin than what the actresses are usually wearing. The film genre, a predominantly Italian one incidentally, started in the early 10s, but that's more information than we need for this particular video to get into. The reason I even tabbed on that particular topic is because this anime is boring! And I don't mean in the, oh man, this is so boring, why didn't you just make a gun and shoot the guy instead of fighting him with your sword sort of crap. No. This is astonishingly boring. The cinematography is dull, and the story follows suit. Why? Well, weirdly enough, it might have something to do with Yoshitaka Amano's style. Now, don't get me wrong, he makes super pretty artwork, and there's no denying that there's clearly talent there, but it does not animate well at all. Look at Vampire Hunter D, the original from the 80s. The artwork in that is exceptionally pretty, but it wasn't until Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust that we finally got something that even looked remotely like the original artwork. Amon Saga came out in 1986. You do the math. For those of you in the cheap seats, what I'm getting at is that Yoshitaka Amano's work is only able to be animated because of the advances that we've made in the industry, and what they had back then was barely worth transporting to celluloid. Remember celluloid? Those are good days. It's noted that Amano contributed to this, and that sounds like a particularly weaselly way of saying they picked up something that Amano scribbled on a napkin and tried to spin it into something coherent and entertaining. And obviously there's actual talent put into this movie, but none of it seems to be in the writing. This snoozer of a serious-minded movie is a far cry from what would be considered entertaining, but it does make me think of those crappy Conan knockoff movies like Ator or Deathstalker more than anything else. But even those are good for a chuckle. Amon Saga really hits home the difference between Japanese and American thought processes when it comes to making films. If there's one thing that I've noticed a lot of that Japanese movies have a problem with, it's actually moving a narrative forward. This doesn't seem like that should be that big of an issue, you know? Anyway, I've dilly-dallied long enough. Just know that I gave you all of that background to make this video long enough to be worth watching. Amon Saga is the story of Amon, a swordsman who wants to go and take his vengeance on the Emperor of Valis for killing his mother. This is not an uncommon or otherwise odd plot thread, but of course, he meets a princess and decides to try and swap out his vengeance in the pursuit of booty. Moody and semi-interesting, almost accidentally, stuff happens and then the credits roll. Does he get his vengeance? Well, let me ask you this. Do you really fucking care? That's the big problem here. We're never really given enough reason to care about Amon and his band of ne'er-do-wells. The world really seems pretty hosed, or at least so miserably uninteresting that letting the designated bad guy rule over it may as well just be the best choice in the long run. Maybe a better hero will come stumbling along. It is, of course, easy to just be reductive and say, well, why bother with any media in that case if you know it's just going to turn out okay? I would counter that with this. The reason that you should make a piece of work is because you want to show something cool and probably make a statement about something. Now that's a very, very reductive consideration, and maybe a little Westrocentric. Who's to say? But if you want a piece of work to actually have some impact, there's a necessity there. A lot of anime movies seem to discard this idea, and that's usually what makes them suck. And I don't just mean suck, I mean really suck. Like, just be awful. Amon Saga falls neatly into this category, and if there's an easy answer for why they do this, I sure as hell haven't figured it out. It's important to know that there are what's called the 8 deadly words for a story, and it goes like this. I don't care what happens to these people, or alternatively, I don't care what happens to these people. Now, there's a lot of things that pour into this, depending on where you put the emphasis on the syllables. Poorly developed characters, narrative foibles, and other such things go a long way to causing these 8 deadly words to come right out of everyone's mouths. Mostly this happens, though, when the characters are stale, uninteresting, or otherwise just feel pointless. When we have a protagonist presented to us, we have certain expectations about what the protagonist has on offer. They should be relatable, if a bit flawed, but they should be able to grab our attention easily. You should have some affection for the good characters in a tale, and some ill will towards the bad guy. But the bad guy here is just doing a pointless power grab, and Amon is just gonna try and kill him anyway. It's plot by convenience. Is the story happening to the characters, or are the characters causing a story? It's not that hard, people. Yes, it sounds like a lot of work to put it into a narrative construct that is animated by a team of lots and lots of people, but the basic core conceit is always going to be your characters are what drive the story. What is Amon's character arc? He has none. What are his dreams and ambition? He's gonna kill a guy. Cool, what does he do after that? It's fucking nothing. I don't care. I don't give a rat's ass what happens to that world, because I've been shown no compelling reason to pay attention to anything here. Look, I know I'm just stalling for time because I promised to do this one, but seriously, this may be the closest thing you can do to staring at a blank wall for an hour and change. The dub is exactly what you'd expect for 2001 from manga entertainment. But unlike some of their other releases, which are entertainingly atrocious, this one will put you to bed faster than a bottle of cough syrup and a treadmill. Here's what it boils down to. There are good, dumb movies. There are good, smart movies. There are brainless sword and sandal movies, and there are good sword and sandal movies. And then, there's Amon Saga. Save yourself some pain and don't give it the time of day.